is that they are scrapping and grasping at straws because they have nothing else. Laugh at them. Stephen Miller is a clown. I've never seen that guy in real life, but he looks like he's like 4'10", and he looks like he is angry about the fact that he's 4'10", and he looks like he is so mad that he is 4'10", that he's taking that anger out at any other population possible. Like, laugh at them. Laugh at them. Yes, they are dangerous. Yes, we're here to be strong for one another. We need to expose the lies. We need to never let off the gas when it comes to protecting one another, exposing the lies, documenting things. We're seeing this too, right? And so I think it's very important to be able to hold multiple things at once. And we've seen this work in other cultures. We've seen this work in other countries.
So that was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez instructing her followers that the strategy that they need to employ against Trump administration officials and people on the right in general is to make fun of them, is to laugh at them, which normally would be no problem at all whatsoever. If you guys actually want to try to tell jokes, I say feel free and go for it. However, Ocasio-Cortez wasn't saying that you should make fun of them for their policies or anything of the sort. For some reason, Ocasio-Cortez decided that the real issue with these Republicans is their insecure masculinity, not just their toxic masculinity. And in fact, what Democrats need to do is laugh at people like Stephen Miller because he looks like he's 4'10", and she's angry that he looks like he's 4'10". And obviously, if you're under 5 feet tall, the implication is that is a bad thing and you are somehow a bad person / less of a man. This is coming from the same people that will go after you for body shaming. This is coming from the same people who talk about protecting the disabled, and I'm pretty sure if you're under 5 feet, you're actually considered like a midget, like technically under the law. But Ocasio-Cortez decided that we need to fight back as progressive lefties against the shorts because they're the real problem in our society, and I find this to be absolutely hilarious on a number of levels, including that just one day later, because her audience is a bunch of progressive lefties, Ocasio-Cortez immediately apologized. She immediately backed down because this is how weak these people actually are. But this is what we're going to talk about today. However, before we do, I want to thank everybody who boosts my height over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Yes, the resistance to authoritarianism is very real. The risks of abuse of power are very real. But one of the most powerful cultural things that you can do to a political movement that is predicated on the puffery of insecure masculinity. That's what this is about. This isn't, people talk about toxic masculinity more than it's like, let's put that to the side for just 1 second. This is about insecure masculinity. And one of the best ways that you can dismantle a movement of insecure men is by making fun of them. By having secure men who aren't afraid of successful people around them.
So the Democratic Party is obviously struggling with men, with young men in particular. In fact, many people have documented the gender divide between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and part of the reason for that is because Democrats do not like men. They talk down to them, they attack them, and God forbid you're one of the worst of the worst, a straight white male. People like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are going to think that you're subhuman. Now, a lot of people will point out that Ocasio-Cortez's long-term boyfriend, Riley Roberts, is in fact a white male. However, I've seen him walk their little dog, and I think the descriptor of straight is a bit of a stretch for Mr. Riley Roberts. But the thing is, other than her own personal lapdog boyfriend, what Ocasio-Cortez is actually doing here is showing us the exact same pattern that we see with these self-described feminists, self-described progressive women, which is the reality that they actually have active disdain for men men. And on top of that, despite the fact that they want to reject certain standards in our culture in terms of their speech, in reality, that is how they value a man. That is how they value you as a person. I mean, really think about it. What is the go-to insult for these feminist types when it comes to men on the internet.com when they don't like those men? What's the number one thing that they call these individuals? They refer to them as incels. Now, of course, there are actual incel communities, and we could talk about that another day and the problems associated with grouping around that like it's a real identity or should be a real identity. But the fact is, you have all these different various feminist women that will go out on one side of their mouth and tell you that it's bad for you to pursue women, it's bad for you to try to sleep with a bunch of women, but the way that they judge you as unworthy, the biggest insult that they have against you is, guess what? You don't get laid enough. You don't sleep with enough women. Again, while at the same time, they're saying it's wrong for a man to judge themselves and its toxic masculinity based on the number of women that they sleep with. But here we have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez going after people for their height. Obviously, this is something that is brought up against men all the time, and I think it is a bit overplayed. But for instance, it is noticed in dating apps that a lot of women will just pre-screen to 6 feet tall, even though, again, that's only a certain percentage of the population. And typically, if they were dating in person, the rule would be taller than them for the most part. That's typically what they would go for. But this is a part of a culture that constantly judges men, constantly devalues men. And guess what? Ocasio-Cortez, right here in this moment, is telling you what she doesn't value in a man, which, of course, is being too short in her opinion. And in fact, her apology, which is cringy and embarrassing, and again, just goes to show you that Democrats can't even stick by their own jokes one day later if they were jokes, shows us that she still values height in a man as something that's an asset, even though, again, that's something that they can't change about themselves. And this is especially ridiculous considering that these people will talk about body positivity in terms of weight when, for the most part, you can control your weight. Now, I know people are going to cite this condition or this thyroid issue or something of the sort, but the vast majority of overweight people are overweight due to bad habits, and in reality, those habits could be corrected. It could be more difficult for some rather than others, but your height, there's really not a lot you could do about it, although some people end up getting lifts and or doing like knee procedures, which I highly don't recommend.
So, like, that's what I have for that. And also someone said, short kings are great. Absolutely. I'm not here. I want to absolutely make sure that I talk about that. I'm not here to make fun of anyone's anything, but the way people overcompensate over their own stories is what I'm talking about there. So thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Shout out to our short kings. Someone said not short king, short troll. That's correct. There's a difference. Let's see.
Now, I didn't actually see this full clip until rather recently, but apparently somebody in the comments was already offended, decided to bring up the term short kings, which, by the way, I actually find that to be a degrading term, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, just don't refer to somebody's height if they happen to be below your height preference. And in reality, for most men, even though height is definitely an advantage and it will definitely help you in the dating market, as somebody who is not 6 feet tall, as somebody who is 5'10", I could tell you that confidence matters overall. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to say, Sean, you're still much taller than the average woman and whatnot. You're probably significantly taller than your wife, which is 100% true. But I say this as somebody who talks for a living, so obviously I'm confident in my ability to talk. That is the most valuable thing that you can possibly have, a confidence and the ability to speak, because I've dated women that were actually taller than me in my lifetime, wealthier than me when I was absolutely broke, which is when I did the bulk of all of the dating in my entire life. And trust me, confidence reigns supreme over absolutely anything. I'm not saying that men who are taller are not more advantageous in the dating market and whatnot. Obviously, that is true and supported by the numbers. And in fact, that natural advantage in the dating market probably builds up the confidence of a lot of those tall guys. But again, I will tell you from personal experience, even though I'm 5'10", so again, I'm still taller than the average woman, and almost every woman that I ever dated, just speaking with confidence, having command of a situation, actually showing some masculine virtues will help you more in the dating market than fussing about things that you can't change. And again, it's pointless to fuss about things that you can't change because you quite literally can't change that. But it is crucial for you to understand that Ocasio-Cortez wants to dog you on that. She wants to say that she's not in favor of body shaming. She wants to say that it's not about how you look and whatnot. But in reality, what she ultimately ends up revealing in this statement about how much we need to bully men that don't agree with woke progressive values based on their inalienable characteristics is that that's absolutely 100% on their mind, which just makes perfect sense. These people who are obsessed with all these bigotries that they find under any rock are actually the most bigoted, the most spiteful, the most hateful people of all.
I want to express my love for the short king community. I don't believe in body shaming. I am talking about how big or small someone is on the inside.
So this is Ocasio-Cortez's next day post where she apologizes to the short kings, which again, short king sounds like such a degrading, humiliating phrase to be called, if I'm being perfectly honest. Now, I've never been referred to as a short king, but I don't know if somebody in the audience has, but for whatever reason, it seems like pandering. It seems like you're basically putting their height still as the subject that is absolutely crucial about their identity. Like they can't just be somebody who is a good person, who is an established person. And then Ocasio-Cortez goes on to talk about people that she finds to be short on the inside.
Like, for example, I have no idea how tall Andrew Tate is. No idea at all. But that guy looks to me like 5'3". Like 5'3", 5'4".
So this is hilarious for a number of reasons. First and foremost, Ocasio-Cortez is still using height as the metric in order to judge somebody as a valuable person or not. And what she's saying is that I see people that may be tall, that may be attractive physically as unattractive, and the way she defines as unattractive is short based on her perception of their beliefs and actions. Now, she ends up using Andrew Tate as an example right here, and I find this also to be pretty hilarious because she says that Andrew Tate is like spiritually on the inside 5'3", and the reason I find this incredibly hilarious is because Andrew Tate is an accused sex trafficker, and again, even if you don't buy into the sex trafficking allegations or allegations, as the super mayor would call them,
false allegations and not facts.
This is a guy who made the overwhelming majority of his money, according to him, tricking guys into simping for women that were pretending to like them on the internet via his webcam site. And again, he was the one typing the messages in order to suck all of the money out of these individuals. So Andrew Tate, who again, accused sex trafficker, who Ocasio-Cortez, the Believe Women crowd, would believe everybody who is accusing him absolutely no matter what. Somebody who made their money by creating and exploiting simps through a webcam business is somebody that she deems to be spiritually 5'3", as opposed to Stephen Miller, who's somebody that she disagrees with politically, who's a Republican, who is not an accused sex trafficker, who is 4'10", which really just goes to show you the values that Ocasio-Cortez actually is expressing right here. If you are right-wing, if you're somebody who, again, you could disagree with Stephen Miller, you could not like Stephen Miller, but you've led a productive life, or at least a life in the public realm where you're not accused of international sex trafficking and making your money through adult content and exploiting simps, you are considered to be 5 inches shorter spiritually than the person who did all of those things, or at least is alleged to have done all those things. But Ocasio-Cortez, make no mistake about it, if you were to ask her, would definitely say Andrew Tate did do, and yet he's still more valuable in her eyes, according to her own metric, than Stephen Miller, because he's a Republican in American government. Crazy, hilarious, but again, just goes to show you this woman's priorities. Now, she ends up going on to describe her height-based value system, which I find to be absolutely hilarious as we get into it even further.
Whereas, physically, men of smaller stature can come across, they are spiritually 6 foot, if you're a good dad, if you stand with women, if you're not belittling immigrants, you're like, 6'3" spiritually.
Yeah, so if you embody the progressive values, even if you're short and therefore have no value physically, according to Ocasio-Cortez, then you can be spiritually 6'3". And again, it just goes to show you how weak these lefties are, because she ends up ending this. And again, this was all about standing up to Republicans through comedy by asking people if she's being problematic.
If you're not belittling immigrants, you're like, 6'3" spiritually. I don't know. Am I being problematic?
The woman is quite literally beyond parody, but again, I find it absolutely hilarious that her standard high valuation for a man is at 6'3". These Democrats can never help themselves at all whatsoever, but I find it absolutely hilarious that her standard for a valuable man is somebody who is 6'3", and these are the same exact women who are against body shaming, who are against toxic masculinity, allegedly, but again, they hold those very same values. Ocasio-Cortez is somebody who is also likely to hurl the name incel at somebody that she doesn't like, which again, we see time and time again from these progressive women, because they don't like you as man, and in addition to that, they also judge you by the very same standards that they label to be toxic, because guess what? They don't see you as valuable unless you're a certain height, unless you're sleeping with a certain amount of women, because that's what it's all about for women like Ocasio-Cortez. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. This is just my idea on why Democrats are losing men in droves, but I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. And as per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Ocasio-Cortez attacking men. Till next time.